Hello, everybody. This is Chille DeCastro calling from the Clark County Detention Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm an innocent man who has been locked up for filming a cop in the streets. So I wrote something today as I have a lot of time to think, and this is going to go in my book. So this is an excerpt of my book that will be coming out when I get out of jail. I'm going to read it, and there's some things I'm going to say in here that is going to give you an insight to my thinking and why I am the way I am. As I lay down and I think about what went wrong, how could this judge put a first-time offender in jail on an obstruction charge? And I can't believe that I have deserved being put in jail. And yes, I may have said that I hate police, and there's a lot of reasons why I have said that, and there's a lot of reasons why I do. But I thought it was my right to say the things that I said. And so what this book is going to do is help give you comprehension and understanding as why I am the way I am. And so I want to put it into a perspective for you that you can understand. So let me say, for example, that you were going to get a job. Would you take a job where you take people as prisoner, where you put them in torture cuffs and take them to a cage? Who does that? An outright PIG. Now, I'm going to change my verbiage publicly because I must. But I'm not done yet building the comprehension of understanding myself for you to understand me. The goal of this book is so that you will always be able to say, I know why he called them PIGs. So I will change my verbiage. I have no choice to become electable. But because they sign up to do to us, to the public, only for themselves and completely for themselves. To me, the American cop is the most selfish, greedy person on earth, and I can prove it to you. If you had a job at a popular pizza place, and this pizza place sells pieces by the slice, and the front door that you worked at had a little turnstile, and every time someone came in, the turnstile would turn around and whack them in the hip or smack them in the back. It just didn't work. You know the three little bars like in a subway where you walk through it and it flips around? That thing. And so now imagine this. At your pizza joint, after the person pushes through and they get whacked, imagine you would say to them, it's not supposed to be comfortable. Could you even imagine it? Could you even, if they were to complain, whack, ow, 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 this is hurting me, how long would you keep this job? But yet you continue to hear it day after day, time after time, as people get hurt by police with the torture cuffs, them saying, ow, ow, ow. And the worst part of it, the absolute worst part of it, you go into the pizza joint and they stick you in a giant high chair where it sticks you in the ribs and it hurts your back and you're saying, I can't function, this hurts. How long would you keep that job? You wouldn't. Of course, this is a parallel. We're talking about the initial attack and the torture that these people called police in America put on us. And so if you worked at that place where you served pizza and they got whacked every time, you would demand to change, or you would say that they either have to change it or you're going to quit. But what does the PIG in the street say? He says they're not supposed to be comfortable. Torture cuffs are always torture. You cannot apply torture cuffs to a human being and then slip them into a tiny slot in the back of a cage and say that you're not torturing them. When you put them on industrial hardened plastic seats, we, the just, are better than the robber. We, the just, are better than the ravisher. We, the just, are better than the child abuser, the kidnapper, or the killer. Two wrongs don't make a right. And so, what kind of person uses a torture device, an outright mental anguish and fear, and puts it in the people? They're not supposed to be comfortable. Who says that? If cops are not PIGs, where's the decent person who says we can detain and transport people another way? What kind of person would sign up to chaining people's wrists behind their back? Answer that question. Imagine it. You're applying for a new job. It only requires that you chain people's wrists behind their back. Do you want the job? But yet, if you have no skill set and will pay you $6,000 to $10,000 a month, starting off, plus the $15,000 a month signing bonus, now you'll do it. If you want to see a job where you chain people up and you put them in a slot, then you fit perfect in here. Every time almost every time you put those torture cuffs on someone, you render them completely and utterly helpless. And you hear them say, ow, these hurt my wrist, these hurt my shoulders, this hurts my elbow. And the cop will reply, they're not supposed to be comfortable. For me, those are the worst people in our society, the worst people on earth. Let's go back to the pizza place with the turnstop. Now, as people complain and you say, quit, I'm going to quit if you don't fix this. Why are you going to quit? Because it's a $12 an hour job. Your humanity is not for sale for $12 an hour. And what would you say to people who were being hurt by the turnstop or the high chair? You'd call in a fixer, a maintenance man. You'd close the turnstop and say, come around another way. What would you not do? You would say, well, if you want pizza, you're going to have to get hurt. Now, the cops say it's not supposed to be comfortable. But what if we decide to pay you $40 an hour and then told you that you're above these people, that you're better than these people? And you're not just doing a job, you're doing a service. And now we're going to give you a military ranking that you never earned. See, there's a guy above you and there's a guy below you, and now you're a part of this bigger thing. You couldn't find a job with a dental plan and a vision plan. You couldn't find a job with an eye plan before. And the plan will cover every single person in your household, including your mom or your mother-in-law, as long as she lives in your house. What do you care if someone gets whacked or puts in the backseat of a car? You don't care. It doesn't affect you at all. You're important. You never get this kind of prestige and respect in your life. You used to drive a forklift. You used to work at Pet Boys, changing oil in a pit. You used to be a truck driver, alone for days and even weeks. Now other men salute you. You've got tons of buddies, and the money and the benefits are unbelievable. Look at your uniform. Look how important you are. Let's be honest. You're still the dork from the fourth row in history class. You're still with a town bully or the town drunk. You still and always will be pathetic because you took a job where you torture and hurt people. You would never get to associate or hang out with the cool kids unless you were arresting them. And you've taken the bribe and the benefit and the racket. It's all about you. And then you say they're not supposed to be comfortable because you learned it from another dork who happens to be 60. And they're teaching the young dorks like you to be insensitive, cruel, and inhumane. For who? For themselves. That guy is not a cop for you to serve his community. If any of you cops wanted to actually serve any communities, there would be an outright rebellion and a mutiny about the torture cuffs. You cannot serve a community by serving them torture and fear every second of every single day, and then say it's in the name of your safety. Sorry, it just doesn't compute. Say it out loud. They're not supposed to be safe as you snort. These torture cuffs are for officer safety, but you're not an officer. Officer means duty, honor, respect, civility, service. Those are the 5 words I think of off the top of my head. And when you think of the word officer, duty, the duty to treat other human beings with compassion and dignity, honor the others you would want to be handled and how you would want to be treated. Humanity is respect. Civility is to treat people with the same civility that you'd want for yourself and for your brother. And service is the needs of other people and the needs of the community. And here's what John Galt says in the book Atlas Shrugged. Man cannot survive except for by knowledge and reason. It's his only means to gain it. All thinking is a process of identification and integration. Reality, that which exists. The most depraved you can now utter is when you ask, whose reason? The answer is your reason. Your mind is your only judge of truth. Man's reason is his moral faculty. A process of constant change is the answer to the question. In the beginning, the question is this right or wrong? A rational moral process must take shape. Devotion to truth is the hallmark of morality. There is no greater, nobler, more heroic form of devotion than the act of a man who assumes the responsibility of thinking. Directly from Atlas Shrugged. You who have signed up to be the enforcer, to be the cop, have lost morality because you've decided to turn off your mind and to stop thinking. All critical thought has left your vessel, and it's been replaced by your selfish, self-centered looting and robbing, the people who pay your paychecks and all your benefits. You have lost yourself, and you are the robber of humanity. You will say that you were just following orders. It's the system, a system of weak, impotent men who have sold their souls to the state because you are not a man of ability and knowledge. You are not a producer. You have no product. You are the tyranny. You are the parasite that works deep within the meat of the pig. And here is why you are what you are. This comes directly from the book. That's what you call your soul or your spirit is your consciousness. And that what you call free will is the mind to think or not to think. Thinking is man's only basic virtue from which all others are processed. The act of blanking out, the willful suspension of one's conscience, the refusal to think, not blindness, the refusal to see, not ignorance, but the refusal to know. It is the act of unfocusing your mind and inducing an inner fog to escape the responsibility of judgment. On the unstated premise that a thing will not exist if only you refuse to identify it. Now, what does that mean? The cop on the street will say they're not supposed to be comfortable. You have abdicated all responsibility. You have turned off your mind, your humanity, and your morality. And not only torture another person, you have created and repeat catchphrases and mantras to absolve yourself of responsibility for your putrid behavior. With every generation, there are new, bright young humans who can and do see the world in new ways. Yet you chose to turn off your mind and simply say, I'm only doing as I'm told. And you accept the ways of despotism and slave chains, via quips and jargons. You, the young, the new, are supposed to be brave, but yet you accept the status quo.
You have 1 minute left.
The torturous abuse you do to nonviolent persons who you do not care about and will never be a threat makes you a thug. You youngsters do not put your courage up and think to challenge the evil system which you joined for your own personal gain. You fear the loss and the gain of what you never earned and are not entitled to receive because you created nothing. You produced nothing, you earned nothing, but the quiet and open hatred that you receive from a daunted public, you are the worst of all persons America can get, and a lot of us openly despise you. And I call what I see exactly what I see. I call you dirty, I call you selfish, and I have called you a pig. Even though my words will change, that doesn't mean that my thoughts have changed. And now a little bit more from Atlas Shrugged, page 1018 to 1020. Non-thinking is an act of annihilation, a wish to negate existence, an attempt to wipe out reality. By refusing to say it is, you are refusing to say I am. By suspending your judgment, you are negating your person. When a man declares, who am I to know? He's declaring, who am I to live? Thinking in every hour and every issue is your basic moral choice. Man's only moral commitment is, thou shalt think. Ayn Rand. The reason why that the police can't get people to sign up is because you, the new, the old, and the young cops can and do not think through what you are doing. That's why you can't get people to sign up. People are seeing your policies, procedures, and protocols, and they are withdrawing from your oppression. We, the overwhelming majority, refuse to surrender to a despotistic state. Yes, of course, will some still choose? Yes, they will. But we now know that with the majority of people who are in the presence of authority and being arrested, the majority of them, once on video and once a tracking device is attached to them, the overwhelming majority will easily surrender to authority. Yes, of course, some will still run away. Do they need to be chased? No. Can they get away in the digital era? No. So then why chase them? Because you were taught that we are prisoners and that we are your slaves. Once we are deemed a prisoner, there is no length that they will go to capture us and hurt us and abuse us and torture us. And as long as they have a slave catcher policy scribbled down on a piece of paper, and as long as they wear their medals and their stripes, and they consider themselves justified, they will backslap each other as they deem their elements and their demented actions perfectly moral. Yet they are not moral. Even the man who lays his hands on a child or the babe does not justify the action of the cop's response. It is not as simple as two wrongs don't make a right. It's far deeper, oppressive, and evil. The man who lays his hands on a child, or the babe, will now encounter a series of twisted evil that will tarnish his soul and his humanity for the society he will re-enter. The abuser is not put down a garbage disposal, no. Instead of fixing him, he will be abused for a much longer and deeper level of the abuse that he has done. He will come out of the torture chamber with less morality and more pain and more reasons to abuse a society that not only sanctioned but paid for his abuse. And what about the men who came in with their sirens and their lights blazing? What about the men who beat and shackled the abuser from the start? The man who put on the torture cuffs just a little bit tighter because of the black eye that the abuser gave the child. What about him, that man? Surely he will improve as a person because what do we call them? They're heroes, right? Wrong. He is the bad man and he is the worst of them all. How and why? Explain it to me. I will explain it through the book again, Atlas Shrugged, page 1019. To live, a man must hold three things as supreme, ruling values of his life, and they are reason, purpose, and self-esteem. Reason as his only tool of knowledge, purpose as his choice of happiness, which the tool must process to achieve, self-esteem as his inviolate certainty in his mind he is competent to think in his person is worthy of happiness, which means he's worthy of living. These values imply and require all of men's virtues, and all of his virtues pertain to the relation of the existence and consciousness, rationality, independence, integrity, honesty, justice, productiveness, and pride. And this was written by Ayn Rand almost 100 years ago. Any ex-cop who's reading this just sat up in their bed and they just put their hands on their head and said, Eureka, that's why I'm unhappy. After 30 years of service, that's why I'm miserable. That's why you're miserable, exactly. Abusing the abuser did not build your character, create or feed your virtue. There's no productiveness in abusing another person, no matter what they have done. No matter how black that kid's eye is, there is no integrity in torturing the abuser. Justice will not and is not done by hurting the abuser of the boy. You, the man, who may feel some temporary satisfaction by doing it to the abuser, later in life, you'll be a bag of bones and a bag of scars. The kid got no justice. What does the kid want as far as justice? Fix the abuser. Not for you or for me, for the observer, for the kid. More likely than not, the kid loves the abuser. Justice would be not abusing the abuser, but the opposite, treating the abuser with empathy and inclusion. The exact opposite to what it's done. Fixing the kid's broken spirit. Regardless of whether or not the family can be glued back together, if the kid wants the glass glued back together, the cop doing what he does not make the cop virtuous or whole. What the cop does brings him 1,000 miles from virtue. The cop goes back out onto the street with nobody looking over his shoulder, with an anger and hatred for all of us in the world except for those who wear a badge, and will then repeat another mantra that we've heard so much more. Unless you've done the job, you just don't understand. Okay, Mr. Copper. Okay, whatever you think to turn off your mind and follow orders and hurt people, you're not building your own virtue. You did nothing to change the slave-catching system because you didn't want to ruin the loot that you grifted, unearned, and undeserving. You have no virtue because you traded them for favors that you didn't earn. You never questioned of the things that you have done and what that could be done differently because you're only worried about yourself, your loot, your profit, and what you could get as long as you just followed orders. Without question. Without question means without thinking. A man who does not question, does not think, and therefore has not purpose. A man without purpose is the most dangerous man in the world. If that man wants to know what he should think, he'll have to ask his boss. And that's what the cops are. That is why I called them PIGs for so long. I'll not say it anymore publicly. You'd have to read and become educated to the virtues of living to understand. Quote me out of context and I'll understand why. The big money interests of the system are on the line. They're in peril. Their livelihood depends on validating the need for torture cuffs and never ever ending torture cuffs. Even considering shackle people with their arms behind their back and chains. The torture cuff companies are multi-billion-dollar companies. Enterprises. It's an officer safety issue. Who said? Well, that's what was said by the Supreme Court in 1967 with Earl Warren and Hugo Boss, both being white supremacists. And that's the system we live in now, that officer safety is more important than our rights, our freedom, our dignity, our standard of living. Could we change the court torture cuffs? Absolutely. Could we go to a facial recognition system and an air tag that tracks people? Absolutely. But that would mean changing the multi-billion-dollar torture cuff system. There is no other way, they'll tell you. People have to be shackled like a slave from 1860. They're doing it around the world, don't you know? We can never change it. It's for officer safety. When Ann Zimmerman lashed out for me from behind the bench, she said, "You called the bailiff a pig," and then she put me in jail for 6 months. But I thought I was allowed to say whatever I wanted. I thought America had a First Amendment right to speech. I'll not say it anymore. I'll change the way I speak, only to become more electable. That doesn't mean that I've changed my thoughts. And that's just what I wrote so far. There's a little more, but I get into some other things here.